next guest is a senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Aaron Zellin joins me live from Washington. Aaron, welcome to the program. So let's start with what lies ahead for HTS, for the country as a whole, trying to unite these rival factions. I want to begin by asking you, what more do we know about Mohammed al-Bashir? He's the head of now the de facto government going forward as a permanent government is set to be established in the months ahead. We know he's a rebel-linked government leader who also holds a degree in Sharia law. What should we extrapolate from this move?
He's essentially the person that was the head of the Salvation Government, which is the government that HTS set up for civilian control in Idlib prior to this takeover. He's been the prime minister since January this year, so he doesn't have a ton of experience in this. Prior to that, he was one of the ministers related to humanitarian affairs in the government. He does have an engineering degree in addition to Sharia law, but I think part of it is bolstering the legitimacy of his rule as a civilian leader to do so within this context.
As we've noted for the past week now, it's one thing for rival factions to fight for the same outcome, and that is the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. It's quite another to govern together in unity, especially when you've got various entities that have a stake in what's happening in Syria that have different interests in the outcome. I'm talking about Turkey. I'm talking about the United States. Specifically here, what will you be watching for going forward in terms of what any semblance of a government looks like? What do you think al-Jawlani is hoping to mirror a future Syrian government after? Is it a present-day Turkey?
Based off of what we've seen so far, it seems as if they're creating facts on the ground and ignoring sort of the process in the UN and other countries are hoping for in trying to carbon copy the Salvation Government model that they created in Idlib over these years, which is essentially run by a small coterie of men making decisions within the elite over everyone else. So the minorities in Idlib, they don't have representation in it, and neither do women. So while they might not be the Assad regime, which is totalitarian, the way that they ruled Idlib was still authoritarian. And then there's also the question beyond just the western part of Syria, where HTS is now controlling, but the east, where there continues to be fighting between the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army and the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, and the potential stability issues there because the Islamic State still lurks in the background with a low-level insurgency.
We know that the United States has been bombing ISIS positions in the country there over the past several days. Israel has been bombing weapons depots as well as chemical weapons depots, and then also has reestablished a presence on the Golan Heights there in the buffer zone region and striking at Syria's naval fleet. What will you be watching for in the days ahead that gives you any sort of indication that there is more stability in a future Syrian government as opposed to a different form of chaos and violence?
I think one of the keys will be to see how the U.S. and Turkey navigates the current fighting between the forces that they each back on the ground. If they're able to come up with a solution, it would better help stabilize the issue, because I think the SDF, which is U.S.-backed, would be able to cut a deal with HTS. And then if Turkey is allowing this, then HTS would be able to probably take over the SNA, since there are certain fractions within the SNA that are already pro-HTS. But a lot of it, I think, will depend on the discussions happening behind the scenes now between Turkey and the United States. And the hope is that it won't be destabilized, because it's important to remember that there are 10,000 male ISIS fighters imprisoned by the SDF in northeast Syria. So it could go poorly if there isn't a solution created.
So when you hear Jake Sullivan will be in the region later this week, obviously this is a lame duck government for all intents and purposes. We will have a new administration in just a few weeks' time here in the United States. So we hear from Jake Sullivan this week in the region. We hear from Secretary of State Blinken stating that at this moment the United States has not changed its designation of HTS as a terrorist organization, but that can change. Then President-elect Trump Trump has already stated that the U.S. should have no presence in Syria. What does that tell you about what any sort of involvement or influence the United States may have in Syria going forward?
For now, it seems like it's on the outside looking in. Obviously, it maintains a presence through the global coalition to fight ISIS in eastern Syria, but beyond that, it's not doing too much. We should note that today, a number of Arab countries, as well as Italy, met with the political affairs department of HTS. So the U.S. could potentially send messages via its allies from the Gulf states in particular. But at this point, it's unlikely that the Biden administration, being in the last month of its power, will change too much. And the biggest question is whether we'll see a pivot amongst the officials that will be in the future Trump administration. As we saw in his first term, he tried to withdraw from Syria twice. But it's important to remember that the Islamic State still lurks in Syria, and it's had 3 times as many attacks this year as it did last year, highlighting that while it might not be the top news anymore, it could become a bigger problem if it's not stabilized.
All right, Aaron Zone, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.